Hello ladies and gentlemen and everyone beyond, I am BabyNoobCakes and this is PlayStation Plus free game reviews, and in this episode we're going to be taking a look at one of the February 2020 free games, Bioshock, the collection. And since this is actually a collection of 3 games, I'm going to be doing 3 separate reviews. Here we are at game number 2 in the series, Bioshock 2. Since all 3 are pretty story heavy, I will only be giving details on the beginnings of the plot so as not to spoil them. But you may see some footage from later portions of the game. Throughout each, I will try my best to describe to you how each changed since the previous entry, and since this is 3 games in one, I will withhold my overall judgment until the 3rd review. Let's go under the sea to Rapture once again and see how this sequel compares to the first game, in an attempt to answer the question, as one of the free games of the month, was it worth it? Mechanics. Bioshock 2 continues the mechanical trends of the first game. It's a first-person shooter, with customization options through a very similar gene tonic system. The biggest change they made here is that now all of your passive abilities share the same upgrade slots, while in the first game they had 3 different categories of slots that you had to upgrade individually. So this time around you have a lot more freedom with how you build your character. You still have the standard weapons array from the first game, a pistol, shotgun, machine gun, and grenade launcher. The crossbow and camera also make a return, and they even added the ability to remotely hack turrets and cameras with a dart launcher this time. However, in this sequel, each weapon has its own quirks, as this time you play one of the experimental Big Daddies, rather than just a squishy human. The pistol is a rivet gun, the Tommy gun from the first game is replaced with a heavy Gatling gun, and the crossbow is substituted for a harpoon gun. The camera has been given an upgrade to a film camera rather than just stills, but retains its research functionality. And the shotgun and grenade launcher are still basically the same with a few minor tweaks. In addition, the 3 ammo types for each gun make a return, to help make killing your way through Rapture that much better. The weapon upgrades also make a return, but this time there are 3 levels of upgrade rather than just 2 for each weapon. In the first Bioshock, you were able to grab weapon upgrades from upgrade stations, which could increase firing rate, give bigger clip sizes, or increase damage, just like a lot of other first-person shooters do, while Bioshock 2 brings some new ideas to the table. Upon gaining the first 2 upgrades, you'll unlock a 3rd that allows your weapons to become something new entirely. The rivet gun can set enemies on fire, the shotgun can electrify them, and the Gatling gun's bullets will ricochet off the walls. Also making their return in this sequel are the powerful plasmids. Almost all of the powers you can unlock are back once again to be used against your foes. Electricity, fire, wind traps, telekinesis, and bees, among others. The biggest change to plasmids in Bioshock 2 is that as you buy each new level of plasmids, you unlock new usability for each, instead of just powering them up. For example, you can charge up a plasmid and unleash an area of effect power with fire and lightning. Your wind traps can be combined with other elements, and your insect swarm will continually seek out new targets. The list goes on, but I'll let you find your own favorites. Another returning element from Bioshock 1 are the variety of enemies you encounter. The main bad guys are once again the Splicers, who've had just a few tweaks and changes here and there. The robotic defense turrets, security cameras, and flying drones are also back for another round. And of course, the signature Bioshock baddies, the Big Daddies. This time around, they've added another enemy to the mix, the Big Sisters. They have all the strength, abilities, and ferociousness of the Big Daddies, but they're faster and more acrobatic. The biggest new mechanic, though, is the way in which you act with the Little Sisters. In this game, you play as a Big Daddy, and you can actually adopt the little girls, putting them up on your shoulder, and go around the map collecting Adam, the same way you've seen them do in the first game. When you do, however, you will be assaulted by waves of splicers, and you will have to defend yourself and your little ward from their attacks. And once you've done this twice, with any one little sister, you can then return them to the hidey holes, and at that point you can choose to cure or harvest them, just like you did in Bioshock 1.
Thank you.
Art style. Bioshock 2 is also set in Rapture, about 10 years after the first game, so the city is even more degraded than it was in your first outing. It also takes place in another part of the city. You don't really revisit any locations from the first game. In Bioshock 1, your journey takes you to a lot of the commercial areas and research labs of the city. This worked really well for the art team, being able to come up with a lot of varied and spectacular looking locales. While in this sequel, you seem to end up in a lot more mundane places. The Art Deco styling is still present, but the lighting and choices of locations seem to work against this sequel. You end up in a lot of dark, square, concrete rooms, in apartments, prison cells, and offices, more than the fantastically artistically diverse settings of the original. This is not to say that this game is boring to look at. There are plenty of places where the backdrops are really unique. And one of the more standout features of this game, because you're playing as a Big Daddy, is the ability to move around outside of the city on the ocean floor. Sound. The 2K team continued the trend from the first game in this sequel with more 50s and 60s jazz and pop songs that hang over the destroyed city like an idyllic reminder of what could have been. And that theme of repeating what was so good in the first game is going to be present in all of the sound design here. There isn't much more to talk about that I didn't already cover on the first review. There are creepy splicers, whistling steampunk robots, and moaning Big Daddies all over the place. The garbled tape recordings also make a return and tell the tales of the past corruption and fall of Rapture.
In the maintenance bay. Then I'm gonna get the hell out of this hole. These animals want Rapture? They can have it.
Replayability. A full playthrough of Bioshock 2 will last you about 11 to 14 hours, making it actually a tiny bit shorter than its predecessor. As in the first, there are a number of secrets to find along the way, and there are plenty that you might miss. However, there are a lot more options when constructing your character build this time around. There are more passive abilities to choose from, and more flexibility in how you equip them, and the upgrades you choose make a lot more of a difference this time around, giving you a more specialized feel for how you actually approach each challenge. The morality system returns, as I explained earlier, with the new additions of being able to harvest Adam with a little sister companion, and your choices once again affect the ending of the game that you'll get. In addition to how you treat the little sisters, there are also a few other NPCs that you can choose to kill, or not, that will have an effect on what ending you get. But, like the first game, there is no real narrative reason to replay the full game. The story is a railroad track. You hop on the train, and get off at the station. Quite literally, in fact. Included with this collection are both of the DLC packs for this game. The first is called The Protector Trials, and it'll add about 1 to 3 hours to the game. This add-on is a series of trials, where you protect a little sister while she harvests a body for Adam. While waves of splicers come after you, you have to defend yourself and her. For each stage, you are given a very specific loadout of guns and plasmids, and they change every stage. You can also earn money from killing the splicers that come after you, and there are nearby vending machines in each stage that you'll need to buy from. Your rewards are concept art and early trailers for the game.
But others chose corruption, and so the city fell. If the world were reborn in your image, would it be paradise or perdition?
The second DLC, called Minerva's Den, adds about 4 to 5 hours of gameplay and is actually a new area in Rapture to explore fully. and you play as a new character named Sigma, rather than the main Bioshock 2 character, Delta. However, they do share one aspect in that they are both Big Daddies. This story takes place at the same time that Delta is exploring the other side of Rapture. You are sent to Minerva's Den in order to reclaim an AI computer to help with the rebuilding of Rapture. Narrative. I've already mentioned the fact that this time around, you play as a Big Daddy inside an old diving suit, and to this end, you are searching for your one true little sister. In the opening cutscene, you see that you were actually around back when Rapture was young, and before its fall. However, when you start playing the game, you've been dead for a decade, and start the game popping out of a Vita chamber, one of the game's respawn points, and pretty much only know one feeling, that you need to find your bonded daughter, Eleanor.
Find me.
Along the way, you are aided at first by Bridget Tenenbaum, the caretaker of the Little Sisters from the first game. She soon introduces you to Augustus Sinclair, a businessman who knows the city well and guides you through most of your playthrough. Your little sister from 10 years ago, Eleanor, is now all grown up, and she can actually communicate telepathically with you as well, and uses her influence to send you gifts and advice from time to time. In Bioshock 2, you are antagonized by Sophia Lamb, this game's villain and Eleanor's mother. She still seeks to create a utopia within the destroyed remains of Rapture, and has little use for anyone who opposes or disobeys her ideals. Along the way, you will find a few others who are wrapped up in Sophia's plans, and they seek to get rid of you. Without spoiling anything specific, this game focuses much more on the secrets behind the Little Sisters and Big Daddies and how they came to be, and really explores that aspect of the Bioshock lore. It also delves into the lives of the people and scientists and the experiments they were involved in to create the plasmids and bizarre gene splicing that is the cornerstone of life in Rapture.
Whatever you may have seen inside.
My opinion. Oh boy, here we go. I am not a huge fan of this sequel. I loved the first game and have played it over and over. Bioshock 2, on the other hand, well, this is the second time I've started the game, and the first time I finished it. Back when it was free with PlayStation Plus in December of 2012, I downloaded it, played it for a very short time, and never touched it again. I was not very impressed then, and even now that I've played it all the way through, I still have some really mixed feelings about it. They upgraded the plasmids, they upgraded the guns, they all have a better feel to them and can be customized much more than the first game. However, I didn't enjoy the combat as much. You can't carry as much ammo and health kits as compared to Bioshock 1, and it forces you to change up your strategies more often because you're always running out. And I felt that there was a very feast or famine approach to what you find laying around the city. So often, I found myself totally full on ammo, and everywhere around me was so much more of it that I just simply couldn't carry. But then, once I finished up a firefight, which tend to be longer than they were in Bioshock 1, I was usually completely out of ammo for the guns that I actually liked using. And more importantly, I was out of health kits. Why that's more important is because even though you play through as a Big Daddy, you have the constitution of a piece of paper. Enemies rip through your health constantly, and you're asked to fight large groups of them more often. I also love the idea of the stories of the City of Rapture and its weird dystopian lore. And again, without spoilers, I loved the climax and the ending of the first game, and how so much of the story revolved around you as the character you were playing, Jack. But in Bioshock 2, I felt disconnected from the events that were happening around me. That wasn't until the last 25 or so % of the game. I did really enjoy the ending of the story here, but it takes so much effort to get there, and as good as it was, it still didn't top the original. Another problem I had here was the pacing. You start off the game pretty much going down a straight corridor, hitting the glowing buttons to open doors, and reliving the start of Bioshock 1, Hey, remember how you had to get plasmids? Well, go do it again. Hey, remember how the city was destroyed? Well, it's gotten worse. Hey, remember how you had some weird psychic link to something in the city? Well, here's a new one. But it goes from railroading you straight down a path to this labyrinthine maze of square claustrophobic rooms that are so unmemorable and sometimes confusing to navigate. I never felt I had so many issues getting lost in the first game as I did in the second. This was in part due to the landmarks and uniqueness of the setting you're in Bioshock 1. I will admit, I had a lot more fun this time around than I did the first time I tried to play Bioshock 2. And after researching whether people liked this one at all, I found quite a few blogs and articles saying that this Bioshock was actually their favorite of the trilogy. I see where a lot of them are coming from. The one that I found the most interesting was written by Eurogamer and is linked in the description if you care to read it. It seems that the love of this game was based on the ideological arguments and concepts it explores. And I agree with their reasons for liking it, I understand that. And I did miss a few things that this article pointed out to me. The first Bioshock mostly explored the concept of, hey, if you let crazy people run wild, everything society turns crazy. Who knew? In the second, it looks more at people who survived alongside those who were truly insane, but weren't crazy themselves necessarily. It explores how they could have possibly just been misguided by their environments and those that surrounded them. And maybe they ended up doing some evil deeds alongside their just intentions. And these evil deeds colored them in the wrong light and put them on the wrong side of history. And it's more for you to decide. And after reading these articles, I understand this love that some people have for this deeper story. I maybe just don't value the same things that they do. And I think for Bioshock 2, what it really comes down to for me is the more restricted gameplay compared to the first, and a general lack of tension throughout the game, which led me to not liking this one. And while the story may be deeper and more intellectually entertaining, due to the similar storytelling approaches that Bioshock 1 and 2 both use, I just wound up more engaged in the first. As far as the DLC goes, the Protector trials are boring. It's just a repeat of one of the aspects of the main game with no lasting rewards. Other than concept art, which is okay I guess, it's interesting. But had I bought this DLC, I would not have been very happy. As for Minerva's Den, I did kind of enjoy it. It was a short, little succinct package that told its story, but still had the feel of a full Bioshock game and was paced pretty well. There were a few new guns and abilities only available in this adventure, and they're actually some of the best. I really wish they would have been in the main game. However, it did suffer from some of the same issues as the main game of Bioshock 2. It had a really slow start that didn't get me invested in the story right away, but in the end had a decent payoff. I did also have a few issues with textures loading in improperly, but that seemed to only be when I first loaded it up, and it seemed to clear up after a few minutes of playing. So that might just been my experience. Was it worth it? I'll be short in this section, since I've already told you that I'm withholding judgment until I've reviewed all 3 games in the series. But to me, Bioshock 2 was a letdown in comparison to the first. It had a lot of the same elements, and even improved on them, but I feel it just didn't have the same polish and love and care that was put into Bioshock 1. Some people will see it as just another Bioshock story that they can play through, and will be plenty happy about it. But I feel like a lot of you out there will feel similar to me, and not get the same enjoyment out of it that you will with Bioshock 1. So, you'll have to wait and see if the 3rd game in the series can win it over for Bioshock, the collection. But before I go, there is one more thing I want to mention now, since I didn't in the first review. And that is that these games are quite old at this point. The remastered collection does make them look better than they originally did, but a lot of people have already played all 3 of these games during the last console generation, and that might make this collection less worth it to some. But maybe that's for you to decide. Whether you agree or disagree with my judgment, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you think, and let's discuss if this month's games were worth it or not. Also, don't forget to go onto the PlayStation Store and download your free games every month, because hey, they're free, and sometimes you will end up with a few gems. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.